Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. I know you could be anywhere, but you chose to be here. But in all honesty, I know you come to see Felecia because she's going to be a wealth of knowledge. So I really do appreciate that. My name is Stephanie Van Varken. I am the host of Just Talking Business. The show originated during COVID because I was trying to figure out what entrepreneurs were doing to stay alive and thrive. And, you know, there were some very innovative ideas out there. Had a chance to interview some, I honestly have to say, I think I learned myself. I think that's why I do this show, so I can learn myself. And we were able to, you know, thanks to the Center for Black Innovation, Zakia, we came up with this idea to do the Bootstraps to Millions, because now that we're sort of out of that challenge, small businesses need to learn how to really scale, and I'm talking to folks who can tell us how to do that. So before we get started, I do have a couple of things I want to say. I want to thank a couple of our sponsors who've really supported us along the way as we've done this event. Quick Lick Gosling Rum, who is, I said that right? I'll come later. I'll get to it before. Chef Chris and Teach the Truth Gardens. Did all the food that you ate right, really good. The flowers came from the garden right next door, right here in historic Overtown. So we really want to thank them as well. And last but not least, the Center for Black Innovation has been a wonderful partner in this effort. And so I definitely want to thank all of you, Center for Black Innovation, and for all you've done with regards to this project. So let's get started. I am very excited. I also want to thank Felecia. Thank you so much, because I saw you at an event and I was like, I want to interview you. And she immediately said, okay, give me a call, we'll do something. So I appreciate you. So let's get started with who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I am Elmay and Willie's daughter.
Start with that.
The granddaughter of a Jamaican sugarcane and yam farmer, and a grandmother who had a second grade formal education, but was probably one of the smartest people I've ever known.
Very nice.
And so I feel like I always have to introduce myself that way. Then I can tell you all the
other
titles,
stuff,
because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And so CEO of Pharrell Williams Black Ambition Opportunity, which is an opportunity fund that invests in Black, Hispanic, and HBCU entrepreneurs. Co-founded the Center for Black Innovation. Ran a food company for 7 years after falling down chasing after an ice cream truck in heels. Worked in corporate America for years, for Nintendo, for Sony, for the NBA, for McKee Foods. Most people don't know McKee Foods, but you know Little Debbie snack cakes.
Right.
And it was my job to collect 1 million smiles all across the United States and do marketing campaigns for them. And then I grew up in Delray Beach, so Florida girl.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Okay, that's kind of cool, because I don't know why I thought you were from up north, but good. Right.
No, most people think I'm from Miami. I'm from New York, and I have no idea
how
I
that
don't like the
rumor
cold
got out
at
there.
all, but most
rumor
people
got
think for some odd reason I grew up in New York.
I hear you. Well, you talked about, so it's funny, as I've talked to people and told them we were going to be interviewing you, many of them know you on different trails of your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah.
I met you when you were doing the popsicles.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how that started and where you've been, where that journey has grown since then.
How do I describe the popsicle company? Came up with the idea after falling down, chasing after an ice cream truck in heels. Luckily, the ice cream truck driver stopped. He was laughing at me when he stopped. And while I was on the ground trying to get myself back together, I was just like, there has to be a cooler way for adults to enjoy ice cream. And that was, oh my God, how long ago was that? It was around 2016, 2017.
Okay.
No, wait. Yeah. And it was the last economic downturn.
Okay.
And so we started that business in 2008 after my husband and I both got laid off from our jobs working for Nintendo.
Okay.
And running experiential marketing campaigns for them. And if I could find another job, I would have never started
Never
started the business, and we probably wouldn't be having this conversation, because I really loved what I was doing.
Okay.
It was like growing up and your parents telling you that you could never make money playing video games all day. And I was like, Mom, listen, I'm getting paid really well to play video games all day, but more was help other people and show them how to play video games and then buy the video games, right? And so I loved it.
Right.
And my job was 100% travel, paid by Nintendo, right? And so I've been to every state in the United States.
Okay.
I've stayed at least, if not a day, a week, running experiential marketing campaigns. And so in my early 20s, like, that was a dream job,
Right.
like absolute dream. Like, I get a really nice paycheck, more than what my friends my age were making. I get a per diem. I get to travel on somebody else's dime. I get to see the world. And then I get to work for I thought was one of the coolest companies ever, Nintendo. Like,
Right.
I don't want to do
Right.
nothing else. Where else can I, like,
Go in
know,
life.
right? And so, but then when the economic downturn happened, and when we got laid off, moved back to Florida, moved back to my parents' house, and I also brought my husband with me. So my parents were just like, well, what's going on? It's two of y'all now? And during the time of, like, being in experiential marketing and being primarily on the West Coast and going from city to city and putting these campaigns together so people could essentially try the video games before they could buy it. A whole different experience than standing in the middle of Best Buy and just playing. Like, we literally were bringing the video game to life. So people would have an immersive experience into the game, right? So if you think of, what was the game? We Fit, right? Like, we would literally bring a gym to life, and then you would have the boards there, and you would, like, be playing, but it was an immersive experience, and that was my job.
Right.
And so, if I could find another job in my field, I would have never done anything else.
So you didn't grow up with the entrepreneurial dream like most.
So I didn't grow up with the entrepreneurial dream, but my uncle had been entrepreneurs for most of my life.
Okay.
And so they own a construction and development company in Delray, like a really successful one. But I grew up seeing the other side of entrepreneurship. So my dad was working for UPS, hurt his back, used, I guess, like, his compensation from that, and decided to, like, he never wanted to work for anybody else again, started a construction company. And so I only saw struggle. I saw my dad and my uncle came home dirty every day, late hours. And as a kid, all I knew was, like, my dad never made it to a basketball game.
Right.
And, like, a long list of things, right? And so I think people don't talk enough about how kids experience entrepreneurship when you grow up in an entrepreneurial household. And I say all that because I did not understand that they were entrepreneurs. I just knew that they worked really hard and they came home dirty every day, and they didn't make any of myself, my brother, my cousins, extracurricular stuff.
Right.
Now, as a parent that's also running businesses, I understand the sacrifices that they made on a whole other level, to the point where, like, I hope I wasn't a jerk, right? Or, other words, there's a young person here, so I won't say it, but that was my experience as a. And
are you having those conversations with your children now, or just kind of waiting to see?
I am, and we are, and so, like, we try and be much more entrepreneurial in our family gatherings, right? It's like, for Thanksgiving, what are y'all building? And when we're incentivizing them, it's always kind of incentivizing them to start something, build something, break something apart, and put it back together. My son, who's 6, will probably be the one to take over the Hatcher construction business. He loves it, right? He just want to build things. You can't tell him, like, so I love that, right? My daughter, definitely not. She ain't going in construction. My brother is not, right? My cousins don't want to, but somebody will have to take the family legacy on, because they've been building and growing that company for 30 years. And so I say that, so entrepreneurship wasn't the thing that I knew as a kid in the way that we romanticize it now, or we aspire to it now. But I was a C student in high school. I would break things and put it back together. I could rewire cable in my room. I didn't really care for school at all, but I loved to learn. And I realized later, those are all the characteristics of what we know as like a disruptive entrepreneur.
Right.
And so I never started a business as a kid, but I had all those characteristics. And then I had a model in my dad and my uncle without realizing it. And then you put the lessons together later.
So I interrupted you as you were about to tell me what your journey is. You started with popsicles, and please.
Yeah, so we started, I spent a lot of time on the West Coast, and so I discovered this thing called Mexican paletas, which were fresh fruit, like ice cream and popsicle bars, not the stuff that we were getting in Winn-Dixie and in Publix back at home. It was real fruit, it was real cream, it was delicious. And I was like, man, we don't have this at all back home. But I always tell people, like, sometimes a good paying job will stand in the way of you following your dreams just as much as a bad paying job. And I say that because I had this idea, like, man, I would love to go back and start that, but I'm like, I make really good money. Like, really good. The perks are good. The sacrifices we're starting to make, as far as like compromises, it was 100% travel, so we could never go back. I couldn't go home for a wedding or things like that. You had to be on the road the entire time. So you do have those things that start to weigh on you.
Right.
But the incentive, the gold, what is it? The golden, not the golden parachute. What do people call it? Golden what? Y'all know what I'm talking about, huh? The golden ticket or golden handcuffs. Golden handcuffs.
Oh, okay.
The golden handcuffs of a really good paying job, although you wanna explore some other things, can be it can be very paralyzing. So anyway, I love desserts. We came back to South Florida after getting laid off, could not find a job, and so we decided to literally just experiment because we didn't have nothing else to do, nothing to do. And if you don't, my dad is up at 4 a.m. In bed by 9 o'clock. But if you were not like doing something, he don't think you doing anything. And so we had to start doing something because we were both in it. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Because we were both in the house.
You about to get put out.
The first few weeks, it's like, okay, y'all got laid off. And then after that, it's just like, how long you gonna be sitting on that couch? It was all of that. And so started to like experiment with popsicles and just making and buying the molds off of Amazon. Derek had some old family recipes. He grew up in South Georgia. And we just started experimenting. And then we're like, okay, let's just try and sell these things. And so we bought 2 carts off of the luxury shopping website Craigslist. And they were tricycle carts. And we ran the numbers. We're like, this is gonna be good. Like, we'll at least get close to what we were making, or at least buy us some time until the job market picks back up and like our specific industry started like hiring and putting tours back on the road again. And so that's what we started to do. And we quickly realized a lot of things. So this was way before gourmet food trucks, by the way, right? And so, not way before, but like a few years before that whole craze. And so it was just nothing but like these raggedy old ice cream trucks that would be at the schools at 2 o'clock. And so we had these carts so we could just wheel right up to the kids. And we were just like, man, we're gonna take all the money because they gotta stay behind the gate. We can go right there. Let me tell you, the gourmet ice cream, popsicle, raggedy ice cream truck industry, whatever you wanna call it, it's probably one of the most cutthroat industries I had ever experienced in my life. They let us do this for like a week or two, and then after that, it was like, oh no, like y'all are not. Where do you think you're going? It was
get
like
back behind the gate.
I was like, this is a little too gangster for ice cream. Y'all supposed to be happy. It was just all of that, and so what we started thinking about was like, okay, well, where can we go that we're not gonna get cut or shanked or something?
Shanked by ice cream.
A lot. But then also, it taught us the lessons of like, how do you kind of command a market share in something, or be dominant in something, right? And so there's like the old marketing adage, if you can't be number 1 or number 2 in a lane, you got to go create a whole new lane.
Right.
Because people will just you'll never be top of mind when somebody thinks of you.
Yes.
So that's what Red Bull did, right? They knew that they would never be the beverage, number one or number
Right.
two beverage.
Right.
It's Coca-Cola, it's Pepsi, it's whoever else, you don't even know, right? And so they started at the energy drink lane so that they could be the number one energy drink.
Okay.
And so that's what we started. So we started going out at night. So we would do the nightclubs in like Palm Beach County area, but then we started coming to the nightclubs here. I think Vagabond, y'all remember?
Yes,
Vagabond?
yeah.
We used to be set up right in front of Vagabonds from like 10 o'clock at night to maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And we would make a few $100s in one night.
Right.
And so we were like, oh, and there's nobody here because one, people were they were drinking, they were partying. And then after that, they got to sober up in something. So if it's not the hot dog guy there, then they're going to want a dessert.
Right.
And so that then became our lane of like, we're just going to go out at nights. We're going to go to parties. We're going to go to where the PR people are because if they see us and they like our experience, they'll book us for their events. That's how we started in the very beginning, is literally putting ourselves in a place where we could be the number one, and then putting ourselves in a place where the people with the big budgets would see us, see the experience, and want whoever else, their client, their friends, their families, to experience it too. That's how we got started in Miami.
Okay.
And that's how we started to grow the company from there to be almost like a little bit more of a lifestyle brand that happened to produce gourmet desserts as opposed to just a dessert company, because we took what we learned in experiential marketing and then put that into a really old industry, which is street vending essentially.
Did you sell that business?
We did.
Okay, and
Yeah.
did very well and was able to go to your
It was
next.
it was enough. It was not no. Not even, the amount is not even worth mentioning, honestly. But we were able to sell it enough to get out and do something else.
Okay.
But we took on investors, and if I had hair, my hair would be gone.
Right.
Going through that experience. And that was probably one of the hardest years of our life.
Really?
Oh my God, yeah. And I learned a lot of lessons, even how I structure Black Ambition now. A lot of the advice that we give to the entrepreneurs is like based off of our entrepreneurial experience, and then the road of dealing with investors as well.
And that's a very intimidating thing for sure. I want to show you something, and I don't know if you remember this.
I saw it. I was like, I gotta get you an updated one.
It's from back in the day. It's signed and everything. It is, Felecia wrote this.
Yeah.
It is How to Start a Business on a Ramen Noodle Budget. So I remember when I read it, it was very interesting.
Yeah.
But do you think a lot of these things still apply? Are these the types of things you tell a startup?
Yeah, I mean, there's
company?
an updated version of that. So in the updated version, yes. But the story of like how Derek and I started our food business is all in there, right? And so, and we literally started the business on a ramen noodle budget.
Right.
We used the last $2,000 that we had in our savings, and that's what we bought the carts with.
Very cool.
We didn't even have enough money to get them professionally graphic wrapped. Like we went to Home Depot and we spray painted the carts. And then when we used like some deposits that we got from doing some private events with the carts, that's what we used to buy ice cream truck, a Chevy P30 ice cream truck. And then we spray painted that too. So like it was very,
you could wrap anything.
It was very, I'm a daughter of a contractor, so we gonna put things together. But it was extremely scrappy in the early days, extremely scrappy.
So, okay, let's talk a little bit now about where you are today.
Yeah.
I do have to start with this question,
Sure.
because it's the question that I think everybody wants to know, since this is called Bootstrap to
Sure.
Millions. What is your company worth?
My Black
Ambition, yeah.
Our annual budget is about $7 million.
Okay. And it's a nonprofit.
It is a
Starts
nonprofit,
yeah. So tell me about Black Ambition. First of all, how did it come to be that you're the CEO of that company?
Yeah.
And what is it? Share with us what that is.
Yeah. Black Ambition, we invest in startups. And so Black, Hispanic, HBCU startups that are early stage companies that have the potential to do some really, really phenomenal things.
Okay.
They're for-profit companies, but kind of like an unspoken rule of ours is like we're looking for them to also have like kind of the heart and soul of a social impact company. We need you to go make your money,
Right.
but we are also kind of just looking at like the founder itself, that we know that at some point they're going to circle back to their community.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
That could be how they hire. That could be, you know, when they sell their company, they're going to come and do something back. That could be how they mentor. It could be a number of things, and that is also what we're looking for. But it's
Okay.
never a part of the application, if that makes any sense, right? And then it's almost kind of like rocket fuel in a lot of ways for entrepreneurs. And so we have invested in 101 companies up until this point. We're in the 4th cohort of the program right now. So we'll take in about another 30 to 35 companies that we'll invest in this year. We write check sizes between $25K to $1 million. We've invested about $10 million into those companies, and they've gone on, between the companies we invest in and the semifinals, so kind of the Black Ambition Network, have gone on to do over $97 million in money that they've raised, over $30 million annually in revenue. So the companies are doing really well.
Good.
It's just always kind of interesting because you think these companies are still being passed up by traditional, I don't want to call them traditional, white VCs, right? Primarily, or VCs that don't look like us. And so the mentorship, the capital, the community, we create content as well. And so we have a few shows and things like that, podcasts that we create for kind of learning labs and then immersive experiences with a lot of our corporate partners. And so LVMH is a partner, Chanel has been a partner in the past, Adidas, Heineken, Lennar Foundation is a partner. We have some really, Visa is a new partner of ours. And so some really great corporate partners that either, actually everyone I listed financially supports the organization, but they really pour into the entrepreneurs, and we expect nothing less than that if they're going to be a part of Black Ambition.
Well, you talked about investor. That was your first experience and your worst year.
Yeah.
When I looked at the Black Ambition program, I noticed there were some parts of the application that talked about VCs and investment and that kind of thing. Talk a little bit about what that process is like.
Yeah.
And maybe what are some of the things somebody should be concerned about, worried about, excited about if they're venturing down that road?
Like VC process or just the Black Ambition application?
VC process. Because, that scares me. I'll be honest, that scares me. So if you don't know what you're doing.
So everyone needs capital, right? I mean, that's the thing that I hear every single day. It's the thing that we experience in all the different companies and organizations that we founded. You have to ask yourself, do you actually need venture capital? Because it's a completely different beast, and it is not for everyone. Like, I cannot stress that enough, right? And so if you were, and it's more startup friendly because primarily startups are on a path of accelerated growth where you should see substantial growth in the first 1 to 2 years. To an extent that a venture capitalist can see that, hey, I should be able to get my money back and my investment back in the next 2 to 10 years, right? Usually it's never that long of a runway, but that's kind of the expectation.
Right.
And so if you are not building a company that is going to move that fast in 2 years, venture capital is probably not for you. It is going to drive you crazy, right? And so it's suited for specific type of companies. And so you oftentimes, and I'm trying to explain this in a way where everyone can just understand, because a lot of people make VC just seem like so up here and very inaccessible. And so that's why you oftentimes see it lean towards technology companies because they are moving really fast, right? They oftentimes don't require significant overhead or significant office space or significant manufacturing. It usually doesn't require that, right? It's a really good, strong tech team. if you're lucky, building an innovation and trying to grow its user base as fast as possible.
Right.
And oftentimes that user base may not even be revenue generating, but they know at some point it's going to dominate a marketplace, right? Or it's going to kind of be a threat to some major players in the market. Like I always like to use the example of Instagram when it sold to Facebook, which is now Meta, for $1 billion. I think this might be 10 years ago now. They had 4 employees, $0 in revenue, but they had 27 million users.
Wow.
Now you
Why
understand
no
what I'm
revenue?
saying?
Like, why not? Like, why no revenue?
That's another conversation.
That doesn't make sense. I need to clarify it. I need to research that a little bit.
Because there is financial arbitrage that also happens in the VC space. That's a whole other thing. You have some companies that there is no intention to generate revenue. They're just going to keep raising money and hope to get bought out, and that's how their investors will get their money back, right? That is a game that we oftentimes don't get to play.
Right.
It exists, right? And so raising money is a skill and it's an art. It's not impossible. It's definitely something that you can learn, but it's a relationship business. And most of us are never taught the relationship business or the relationship side of things first. At every stage of like my entrepreneurial journey, I had to learn that in different ways and learn how to raise money to kind of get to this point where primarily what I do at Black and Vision is raising money because we're we're investing over $3 million a year. So that got to come from somewhere.
Right.
So most of my day-to-day is raising money, working with our partners, now working towards building an endowment. So we're now on this cycle year over year to just kind of build out the sustainability of the organization. But, Pharrell is, I think, his life story, which is actually coming out in a Lego movie.
Yes, it is. I saw that.
Which is really exciting.
I saw that.
Is the Black ambition story, right? It is growing up in Virginia and being ambitious and using music to then turn into the empire of companies that he's been able to build, but then also having to learn the relationship game, the music game, the entertainment game, the fashion game, and understanding how effed up it is for us, right? And so if we can do something about it, that's what Black ambition is to create the opportunities, give some capital, give some really high level, important, real type of mentorship, and then really just kind of give them the rocket fuel that they need to go out and build their company.
So why do you think that's so important to the ecosystem? Like, we're here in Miami, we're a small business hub, and that's a lot of conversation, but it feels like there's something different happening with Black ambition when you look at the scale and the investment and the capital potential. Why is that so important in the ecosystem, and how are we able to grow that to have greater impact?
Tell me what you see is the different part, and I can answer it better.
Well, first of all, it's very much focused on a particular audience or target. I have had a challenge, I guess, with the ecosystem in saying we haven't focused a lot on scale in a real way. Scale has been around education, which is not bad. That's not a bad thing. But real investment doesn't always come with that. And it seems like y'all are really putting your money where your mouth is. So why is that so?
We are, and it requires a lot more people to do the exact same thing and more, right? And so, in order to scale, it requires capital. There's no other way around it. There isn't, right? Like, you need the money. And oftentimes when you're talking about Black and Hispanic entrepreneurs, especially Black entrepreneurs, people will ask you, they've asked me, like, aside from the money, what else do they need? The money you keep putting aside. Like, if we don't do that first, what you talking about, right? And so you have entrepreneurs, phenomenal entrepreneurs that are getting contracts at Walmart and Target, and they can't fill those POs because they need capital.
Exactly.
Right? So So there's that. There's a value in our communities that is oftentimes missed until it reaches like the stratosphere. Then everyone's just like, oh my,
right,
oh my
yeah.
God, I see it. And so I would say the difference between the work I was doing when I was running the center to Black Ambition is the capital part.
Okay.
And so one thing I was never able to do here is actually deploy capital to entrepreneurs.
Right.
And so you can build an environment, you can build a space, you can attract resources, but at some point the capital has to match those resources.
I agree.
And if the capital never happens, like you got entrepreneurs that can put along, but they get to a point where they completely burn out or they completely exhaust out. And that's not fair to entrepreneurs. That's not fair to our communities, right?
I agree.
And so you need that. The celebrity component to Black Ambition is also really important because people have become too comfortable wasting the time of Black entrepreneurs and dismissing us. Right? And so when it's Pharrell, it's Pharrell's organization that's coming in, it's a completely different conversation. I'm saying the same thing I've been saying for 10 years.
Right. But now they're listening to you because of who you are.
When I say the same thing, I say the same thing, verbatim. It has not changed. Black people need money.
But now
it's just like, oh, we found this, like, here you go. And so that actually tripped me up for maybe the first year in the role. I've been in the role 3.5 years now.
Okay.
Because I'm just like, but I talked to you last year.
Now you're in a different place.
Now you're in a different, right? And so, and I'm like, that was the same budget allocation you got last year. I'm keeping the score.
Now you owe me more.
And so, you owe me, yes. And so there is that. I got stories for days, but there is that to kind of grapple with. Like the money exists. They ain't gotta go reprint the money. It exists, right? It's the intention and the incentive that they have to do or not do.
Right.
And so that has been interesting, right? Because it's now not necessarily like they need to do this for community good. It's like, well, my proximity and association, and that was really hard for me to kind of wrap my head around. But when I did, I was just like, okay, let's go out and get as much resources and support for these entrepreneurs as possible, because I know what incentivizes them now.
Right.
You almost have to kind of push that aside just to get what our entrepreneurs need as much as possible. And it should not be like that, but that is the world that we live in.
But it's creating that window of opportunity.
It's creating the
that
window,
people might not
and
have
you gotta ram that window open as much as possible for as long as it stays open.
So how'd you get that job? Like, I think that's very, like, because by the way, when she says center, she's talking about this building here actually was a building that you and your husband brought into the area and was doing some good works for startups as well. So
how did I get the job?
Then to walk away and then come.
Yeah, it's like a multi-layer story in telling it. And so for me personally, I had made the decision that I wanted to go do something. I was ready to do something else. It had been 7 years of Code Fever, then running Black Tech Week, and then running the center. And I was tired, right? And so I made the decision, like at the end of the year, I want to go do something else. And so I then start having conversations with people, letting them know, like, I'm ready and open to do something else. In my mind, the do something else was, I'm going to go launch a startup. That was what was my intention. And it's a really interesting thing that when you finally make your mind up to do something, Oprah, not to sound like all Oprah Super Soul Sunday-ish, then like the universe conspired. And I was like, whatever, Oprah, when I would hear it, but like legit, when I started just having conversations with people, trying to explore like what else are opportunities, what else is out there, or not even really what else. It's just, I'm telling you, I'm getting ready to leave, right? So whatever. And It's funny because I got 2 job offers in the exact same week, just both out of nowhere.
Wow.
Y'all, I hadn't gotten a job offer in 11 years.
I don't know what
So
to do
when I
with
say
this.
the universe conspires, when you just make up your mind, right? And I think when you're either deciding to pivot or do something else, you have to be very decisive. You have to make that decision, stand by that decision, find the support that you need for that decision. And I'm always very candid with people that I also went through sessions of therapy in order to make that decision
Oh,
too.
wow. Very interesting.
Because I knew that I wanted to do something different, but like my identity was attached to this in a lot of ways. Intentional and unintentional, right? And if you are building something and you are the face of the thing, it makes it much harder to leave. And when I say you have to be decisive, because when you are ready to do something different, you're ready to take a leap, you're ready to do anything, if you stay longer than you should, you actually start to cause more harm than good.
I agree.
Right?
I do
And
agree
it
with
doesn't
that.
have to be detrimental, but like, you look at that email, like, I don't want to go to that meeting, right? Or you're short-tempered in meetings when you shouldn't be, and it has nothing, maybe it's something to do with the person sitting in front of you, but not to the level of
ruining things, burning things up.
But you're short-tempered, right? Like maybe you're starting to feel burnout, and you don't want to get up out the bed in the morning, right? And you don't want to go to sleep at night because you know you don't want to do this thing anymore.
I agree.
You know it needs you, but you don't have it in you anymore.
Right.
And so that's why I say make the decision as quickly as possible. And if you realize that you don't personally have the tools to make that decision, then go to therapy, find an advisor or someone that can help you get a different kind of vocabulary of what you're saying to yourself, arm you for the conversations that you are necessary for you to have with other people that may say, no, you cannot leave.
For me.
Right.
That has nothing to do with
or
you.
for anyone. Like, no, it needs to be a year. It needs to be, like, whatever it is. And you got to then be able to say, like, no, it's like, this is my final decision. Because if not, you'll waver and all of that. And I had to have some really difficult conversations with people that were near to me and cared about me that were just like, you can't leave.
Right.
And I had a conversation with a business partner, and he hates when I tell the story. He was just like, you can't leave for another 2 years. I'm like, first of all, only my dad and my husband can
say that.
even begin to venture down that conversation. And even that's a little shaky, right? And so, but I realized I needed an armor around me to make that decision and kind of stand on that decision. That's a long way of telling you that.
Oh, that's interesting, actually.
And so when the 2 opportunities came, they both just were really kind of random conversations. And I'm like, oh, y'all are serious? And then I'm like, why are both of these things happening? But again, my plan wasn't to go work for somebody. But I feel like if I am going to go work for someone, this is not a bad person to work for, right? And it would have to be someone like that because I am really not employable by a long shot. I am a horrible employee. Don't hire me to work in your company. I'm not gonna steal paper or nothing like that, but like
I'm not gonna do everything you tell me to do either.
Right. I need the creative release. I need the creative opportunities. I need to be able to structure things. And it has nothing to do with control. It's just the best way that my genius shows up. And so all of that started with a meeting with Pharrell's chief of staff.
Okay.
And like 2 friends that run organizations here in South Florida, and brought this lady to the meeting. And the conversation was originally about like, how can we partner with Black Ambition?
Gotcha.
And it was funny because I was telling them all these things that I thought they could do better with Black Ambition. I had just heard of it, but I was like, it's just a prize competition. Well, what else is there?
Right.
I was like, okay, well, we can be the what else is there, because you're going to need to do X, Y, and Z after, because we had run a bunch of pitch competitions and run an accelerator and run different programs. And it started with that. And then the lady was there, and she just kind of took a bunch of notes. And then she took my phone number, and she was like, can I call you later? And so she called me later, and she's like, "Can you be on a Zoom?" I was like, "Okay, sure." So I'm on this Zoom, and she's like, "Can you say everything else that you said while we were at lunch?" I'm like, "Okay, yeah, whatever." And she was on Zoom, but she was off camera. And the next day, she calls, and she's like, "Can you be the CEO?" And I was like,
Wait, that's what we were talking about.
the CEO.
That's an interview.
It was really strange. It was also like the weekend of my birthday. And so I was just like, look, I think about it. And not because I felt like I was up here and it was just like, it wasn't that. It was just like, it was so out of left field.
Right. I'm ready to have that conversation.
It was so out of left field, and this was the end of February. And again, my plan wasn't to leave and transition until the end of the year.
Right.
And so that turned into a Friday conversation. And then she's like, "Can you go meet with a few people that are in Miami?" I was like, "Dang, it's my birthday weekend." And I was like, "Sure, I'll go meet." And it turned into maybe about 8 different meetings over the course of 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
And then I
Pull the trigger.
transition, yeah.